Zara watched him closely. Alex wasn't sure if she understood the gravity of the situation, but the way she observed him with those deep, thoughtful eyes told him she sensed something was wrong. One evening, after a long day of training, Alex collapsed into a chair in his small quarters. He was exhausted, physically and mentally. The stress of the situation was overwhelming. The pressure of leading the fight, of protecting his team, and now Zara, felt like too much. Without thinking, Alex sat down beside Zara, who had quietly entered the room. She didn't say anything, but she moved a little closer. The bond they had started to build wasn't just based on kindness anymore. It was something deeper, something stronger. They shared this struggle, this uncertainty. They both knew that Earth was on the edge of destruction, and neither of them knew what the future held. For a brief moment, they sat in silence, just looking at each other. Zara reached out with her hand and placed it gently on his. It was the first time she had touched him without fear or hesitation. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than words ever could. Alex looked down at their hands, then back at Zara. He could feel the warmth of her touch, the weight of everything that had happened to them, and the unspoken connection that had formed between them. Despite everything, despite the chaos, the war, and the fact that she was an alien, she had become his ally. In that moment, Alex realized something. He wasn't just protecting Zara because it was his job. He wasn't doing it out of obligation. He was doing it because, in a world full of danger and uncertainty, he had come to care about her. And maybe, just maybe, she cared about him too. The world outside their room was dark, full of threats and challenges, but for that one brief moment, the two of them were just two souls trying to survive together. They didn't have all the answers, but they shared the same struggle, and that made them stronger. As the days went on, the bond between Alex and Zara only deepened. They both faced the looming war together, their shared struggle pushing them forward. They were no longer just a soldier and a prisoner. They were allies, partners in a battle that neither of them could fight alone. The war was coming, and the pressure was mounting every day. The alien fleet was getting closer to Earth, and the soldiers were preparing for the worst. But amid all the chaos and uncertainty, something unexpected was happening between Alex and Zara. The bond they had formed was growing deeper, evolving into something neither of them had expected. They were beginning to fall in love. It started with small moments, shared looks, quiet conversations that didn't need words. Whenever Alex looked at Zara, he saw something more than just an alien prisoner. She was no longer just the enemy. She was someone who had been thrown into a situation beyond her control, just like him. And despite everything, she had chosen to trust him. One evening, as they sat on the roof of the military base, watching the stars, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of the world. The alien ships were only days away, and the fight to protect Earth was almost inevitable. Yet when he looked at Zara beside him, something inside him stirred. There was a softness in her eyes, a warmth that he hadn't noticed before. "You're different," Alex said quietly, his voice almost a whisper against the cool night air. Zara didn't respond, but she turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a look that spoke volumes. She had been through so much, captured, treated like a slave, forced into a life she never wanted. And yet, she had stayed by his side, showing him kindness when he least expected it. Alex felt a rush of emotion he couldn't fully understand. He had never imagined that this alien girl, once an enemy, would mean so much to him. Zara reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against his. It was a simple gesture, but it made Alex's heart race. He could feel the warmth of her touch, and for the first time in weeks he felt a sense of peace, as if everything might be okay. He gently squeezed her hand in return, not knowing how to put his feelings into words. Days turned into weeks, and their connection only grew stronger. They spent more time together, talking about everything and nothing. Zara began to teach him about her culture, her people, and the pain of being caught in a war she never asked for. In return, Alex shared stories of Earth, of humanity, and the battles they had fought to protect their home. With each story, each moment, they learned more about each other, their lives intertwining in a way that felt natural. But it wasn't just the shared experiences that brought them closer. It was the way Alex felt when he was with her. He no longer saw a prisoner or an enemy. He saw someone who had the same hopes, fears, and dreams. Zara's smile, her laughter, even the way she spoke. It all made him feel something he couldn't ignore. Zara, too, had started to feel the change. She had come to Earth as a slave, sent to serve a human who was nothing more than an enemy to her. But the more time she spent with Alex, the more she realized how different he was from the others. He wasn't cruel or cold. He was kind, strong, and had a sense of honor that she admired. And slowly, without even realizing it, she had started to care for him. One day, as they stood in the middle of the training field, watching the soldiers prepare for battle, Zara found herself looking at Alex in a way she hadn't before. There was something in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. He wasn't just the soldier who had saved her life. He was someone who had become her reason to keep fighting, her reason to believe in a future. "Alex," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with emotion. He turned to her, his face softening as he gazed into her eyes. There was no need for words. They both knew what they felt. They had fallen in love. And despite the war, despite the chaos surrounding them, they were willing to face whatever came next, together. The war was no longer a distant threat. It had arrived. Alien ships filled the sky, and Earth's last line of defense stood ready to face the oncoming battle. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with fear and anticipation. Soldiers lined up, preparing for the fight of their lives, but amidst it all, Alex and Zara found themselves clinging to something more powerful than fear: each other. For the first time in months, Alex didn't feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. Zara stood by his side, her presence a calming force in the midst of chaos. She wasn't just the alien girl he had once considered an enemy. She was his partner, his equal, and someone he trusted with his life. "We can do this," Alex said, his voice steady, though the fear was still there. He looked at Zara, who gave him a reassuring smile. She had always been the strong one, the one who seemed to hold the strength of their bond in her eyes. Now, it was his turn to return that strength. Zara nodded, her eyes filled with determination. She had come to Earth as a slave, sent to serve a human man. But in Alex, she had found more than just a savior. She had found a love that was stronger than the hatred that had once existed between their worlds. She had found a future, and she was willing to fight for it. The alien forces descended upon the base with terrifying speed, their advanced weapons shaking the earth beneath their feet. But Alex and Zara were ready. They had trained together, learned from each other, and grown stronger with every passing day. As the first wave of alien troops stormed the base, Alex and Zara fought side by side. It wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a battle for their future, for the chance to be together in a world that had once seemed impossible. In the heat of the battle, Alex looked over at Zara. She was fighting with a fierce grace, her alien strength and advanced skills complementing his human ingenuity. The way she moved, the way she fought, it was like nothing he had ever seen before. She was beautiful, powerful, and in that moment, she was everything to him. Zara glanced back at him, her eyes locking with his in a silent exchange. They didn't need to speak. They knew what was at stake. They knew that if they lost, it wouldn't just be a defeat for Earth. It would be the end of their love, the end of everything they had fought for. The battle raged on, but the humans, with the help of Zara's alien technology, began to push back. It wasn't easy, but with every strike they gained ground. The tide of the battle slowly began to turn, and for the first time, Alex allowed himself to believe they could win. They had the will to fight, the love to push them forward, and the strength to overcome the impossible. By the time the final alien ship was destroyed, the sun was rising over the horizon, casting a golden light over the battlefield. The war was over. Earth had won. But for Alex and Zara, the true victory was not in the battle itself, but in the new beginning that lay ahead of them. They stood together hand in hand, looking out at the new world they would build. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. No matter what came next, they would face it together. It was the start of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter of love, hope, and endless possibilities. The crew aboard the Vanguard had no idea what was coming. Out in deep space, where the stars seemed endless and the silence was deafening, a small, mysterious ship appeared out of nowhere. The Vanguard was on a routine mission when they first detected the strange vessel on their radar. It wasn't supposed to be there, and it didn't belong to any known species. "Prepare for a possible confrontation," Captain Harper ordered, his voice calm but filled with authority. "We don't know who or what this is." As they drew closer, the ship's exterior flickered, as if cloaked in a strange energy field, making it nearly invisible. But then the field dropped, revealing a sleek alien craft. Its sharp edges and strange glowing patterns were nothing like anything humanity had ever seen. The Vanguard's crew immediately set to work analyzing the ship, trying to make sense of it. That's when they saw her. A small, barely conscious alien girl was being escorted out of the ship by a group of heavily armored soldiers. She was a prisoner, forced to march in front of them with her head bowed. Her alien features were striking, pale skin that shimmered under the ship's lights, long silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow faintly. She looked nothing like the war-hardened soldiers who surrounded her. She was fragile, her hands shackled in glowing energy cuffs that kept her from escaping. "Who is she?" Alex, a tall, handsome officer, asked, his voice filled with confusion. Captain Harper didn't answer immediately. He stood up and examined the footage of the alien girl, his brow furrowed. "She's an alien slave, sent here by the Galactic Empire as punishment for some kind of rebellion," he said quietly, his words laced with disbelief. "But why would they send her here?" "To Earth." The air on the bridge grew tense. Nobody had ever heard of such a thing. The Galactic Empire was known for being ruthless, and sending a rebellious alien girl to Earth as a slave seemed strange. Alex, who had been part of the team that first encountered hostile alien forces years earlier, had never seen anything quite like this. As the ship slowly docked, the alien girl was escorted by the soldiers. Her eyes flickered nervously as she glanced around at the human crew. She looked lost, confused, and scared. But as she walked past Alex, their eyes met for just a brief moment. Her gaze was sharp, almost defiant, but there was a flicker of something else, vulnerability. Alex could see that she wasn't just some alien prisoner. There was something more to her, something powerful hidden behind those glowing eyes. But before he could think too much about it, she was taken away to the holding area. Hours later, Alex was in the mess hall, sitting with some of the other officers. The conversation was casual, but his mind kept wandering back to the girl. What was her story? Why had the Galactic Empire sent her here? And why did she seem so different from the others they had encountered? "Hey, Alex, you've been awfully quiet tonight. What's on your mind?" asked Lieutenant Harris, a fellow officer and close friend. Alex looked up, meeting Harris's gaze. "I don't know. There's something about her. I can't put my finger on it." "You mean the alien girl?" "I get it. She's got that look about her. But she's a prisoner, right? The sooner we move her to the Empire's detention center, the better." Alex nodded but didn't respond. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something about this whole situation didn't sit right with him. The next day, Alex was assigned to oversee the alien girl's transport. He was one of the few who had a clearance to interact with her, and as he entered the holding cell, the girl stood up, her eyes narrowing when she saw him. She was sitting on a metal bench, staring out of the tiny window in her cell. She didn't look as frightened as she had the day before, but she was still wary of everyone around her. "Hey," Alex said, keeping his tone calm. "I'm Alex. I'm just here to make sure you're all right while we figure out what to do with you." Her eyes flickered with something like disbelief. "I'm fine," she responded, her voice soft but carrying a strange strength. "I don't need your help." Alex raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't offering, just trying to make things less uncomfortable." She didn't reply, but her gaze softened just a little. Alex didn't know if it was because she was tired of being treated like a prisoner, or if she sensed that he was being genuine. Either way, their encounter left him with more questions than answers. Why did she seem so guarded, yet so different from any other alien he'd met? And why did he feel like he was getting drawn into something far bigger than he could imagine? As Alex left the cell, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something much more complicated, something that would change everything. In the days that followed, as they traveled further into space, the mysterious girl remained a constant presence in Alex's mind. She had come as a slave, but there was so much more to her than met the eye. Alex wasn't sure what it was yet, but he could feel it. This alien girl wasn't just another prisoner. She was about to become something far more important. And for reasons he didn't fully understand, Alex knew that he was going to be the one to find out what that was. The days passed, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something about Solara, the alien girl, was different. Every time he passed by her holding cell, he found himself glancing at her, wondering what was behind her cold, distant expression. He had never met an alien like her before. Most were either hostile or distant, but she was different. Alex had been assigned to monitor her, ensuring she didn't try to escape or cause trouble. But as the days went on, he noticed something strange. Solara wasn't like the others. She didn't act like a typical prisoner. She didn't beg for sympathy or complain about her fate. Instead, she stayed silent, watching everyone with calculating eyes as if studying them. One evening, when Alex walked past her cell to check on her, he noticed something unusual. The cell was quiet, but there was a soft glow coming from inside. He stepped closer, and to his surprise, he found her sitting cross-legged, her hands resting lightly on her knees, her eyes closed. "Solara?" he called softly, unsure if he should interrupt her. Her eyes opened slowly, and she turned to face him. "What do you want, human?" Her voice was calm but cold, yet Alex noticed a hint of exhaustion beneath it. I just wanted to check on you. You've been in here alone for days. Thought you might want something to eat or drink." She didn't immediately respond, but after a long moment, she nodded. "I'm not hungry," she said, her gaze softening slightly. "But thank you for asking." Alex stood there, unsure of what to say. He had expected her to lash out, but instead, there was a brief moment of understanding between them. He could tell she was struggling, maybe even frightened, but she refused to show it. Something about that intrigued him. Over the next few days, Alex began to find reasons to visit Solara's cell. It started with small talk, checking on her, making sure she was comfortable. But as they spent more time together, the conversations became deeper. They talked about Earth, her home planet, and the things they both missed. Despite their differences, they both found common ground in their loneliness. Solara revealed more about her past, her life as a warrior in her own galaxy. She told him about her people's strict hierarchy, where emotions were seen as a weakness. The more Alex learned, the more he realized how much strength Solara had hidden behind her cool exterior. Her rebellion against her own kind had come at a great cost. As the days passed, Alex couldn't deny the growing connection between them. There was something about Solara's quiet strength, her intelligence, and the way she fought to survive, even in captivity. He started to see her not as a prisoner, but as someone who deserved far more than what she had been given. One evening, as Alex sat beside her cell, he finally spoke what had been on his mind. "I don't think you're just a prisoner, Solara. You're not like them. I can see it in you. You're stronger than they realize." She met his eyes for a long moment, her expression unreadable. But then something shifted. She smiled, just the faintest hint of a smile, as if she was beginning to trust him. It was small, but it was enough to make Alex believe that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for a future beyond the walls of this ship. Their bond had started as something simple. Two individuals trapped in a situation neither of them chose. But now, it was starting to become something much more. A connection neither of them expected. A bond that would change everything. Alex knew that what was growing between them was more than just curiosity or compassion. It was something deeper, something neither of them had planned for. And he wasn't sure where it would lead, but he was ready to find out. Things were changing fast. Alex couldn't deny it anymore. He was beginning to care about Solara. They had formed an unexpected bond, one that felt more like a friendship than a prisoner-guard relationship. He had never imagined that a bond with an alien could grow so deep. But there was no denying the connection between them. Still, their situation was far from easy. There was always the looming threat of her being sent back to the Galactic Empire, and neither of them knew how long their time together would last. One day, as Alex entered the command center, he noticed a flurry of activity. Officers were moving around frantically, scanning reports and communicating with other ships. Captain Harper stood at the center, looking over a large holographic map of the galaxy. "Captain, what's going on?" Alex asked, approaching the table. Harper looked up, his face tense. "We've just received a transmission from the Galactic Empire. They've tracked us, and they're sending a fleet to take Solara back." Alex's stomach tightened. "They're coming for her? How soon?" Within the next 48 hours? We have no time to waste. We need to figure out what to do, Captain Harper replied, his voice filled with urgency. Alex's heart raced. He had known it would come to this. After all, Solara was their prisoner, but he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. He couldn't imagine just handing her over to the Empire. She had become more than just a prisoner to him. She was someone he cared for, someone he wanted to protect. He knew what he had to do. Later that evening, he made his way to Solara's holding area. She looked up as he entered, her eyes immediately scanning his face. "What's going on, Alex?" she asked, her voice cautious. "The Empire is coming for you. They'll be here in less than 2 days," Alex said, trying to keep his tone steady. Solara's expression hardened. "I knew they wouldn't let me go that easily." Alex felt a surge of anger. "I'm not going to let them take you," he said, his voice firm. "I've been thinking, and I have a plan. We can escape before they get here." She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Escape? From what I understand, their fleet is vast, and their forces are more powerful than yours. How exactly do you plan to escape?" Alex leaned in, lowering his voice. "I have some contacts, people who can help us. If we act fast, we can get you to a safe place before the fleet arrives." Solara studied him for a moment, her eyes piercing. She was silent for several seconds, and Alex could feel the weight of her gaze on him. Finally, she spoke. "You don't have to do this for me. I'm not worth risking your life." Alex shook his head. "You are worth it. And besides, I'd never forgive myself if I let you go back to them." For the first time since they'd met, Solara looked vulnerable. She seemed torn, unsure of whether to trust him completely. But then after what felt like an eternity, she nodded. "Okay, I'll trust you." The decision was made. They would try to escape, even if it meant facing unimaginable danger. But they had no choice. If the Galactic Empire caught them, it would mean Solara's death, and Alex didn't want to think about the consequences of failure. As the hours passed, Alex and Solara began to prepare. The ship was large, and there were many places to hide. Alex knew the crew's routines, their patrols, and the best escape routes. He had been in tough situations before, but this was different. This time it was personal. Solara was no longer just an alien prisoner. She was someone who had earned his respect, his trust, and now he was about to risk everything for her. They spent the night making plans, setting everything in motion. They would have to move quickly, silently, and hope that the crew wouldn't notice they were gone until it was too late. But as Alex sat there, watching Solara prepare herself, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of fear. The mission would be dangerous. If they were caught, it would mean certain death. But he wasn't going to let fear stop him. He was going to do whatever it took to get her out of there. Because for the first time in a long while, Alex was fighting for something that truly mattered. And he wouldn't let anything stand in his way. The night was colder than usual, and the ship's hum echoed in the stillness as Alex and Solara prepared for their escape. Every step, every decision had to be perfect. The Empire would stop at nothing to capture her, and their window of opportunity was quickly closing. They had to move fast, and they had to be smart. Alex had already mapped out the escape routes, but the danger was everywhere. Every crew member was a potential threat, and the ship was filled with surveillance systems. If they made one wrong move, it would be over. Solara, however, was calm. It was as if danger didn't faze her. Her whole life had been about surviving, fighting, and adapting. And even though she was in a completely new environment, she was more than capable of handling herself. Alex couldn't help but be impressed by how collected she was under pressure. Her eyes were sharp, constantly scanning their surroundings, and her movements were precise. She was ready. As they crept through the ship's corridors, Alex noticed how different Solara was from the person he had first met. The cold, distant alien warrior was gone. In her place was a woman with strength, determination, and a growing trust in him. It wasn't just survival now. They were working together, relying on each other. And for Alex, that connection was becoming something deeper. "You're quiet," Solara whispered as they hid behind a stack of crates, waiting for the guards to pass. "I'm thinking," Alex replied, his voice low. "This has to work. We don't have a backup plan." Solara gave a small smile, though it was hard to see in the dim light. "If we fail, I'll take the blame. You did all you could." Alex shook his head. "No, we're in this together." The sound of footsteps approaching broke their conversation, and Alex motioned for her to stay still. They had to stay hidden, blending into the shadows until the coast was clear. He could feel his heart racing in his chest, but he also felt something else, a deep sense of determination. They were so close now. If they could just make it to the escape pod bay, they could get off the ship and make their way to the rendezvous point. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the coast was clear. They hurried through the narrow corridors, avoiding the main hallways where the guards were more likely to patrol. As they reached the escape pods, Alex could hear Solara's breath, steady and calm. She seemed unshaken by the risk, while he felt his nerves tightening. "Almost there," Alex whispered. Solara nodded, her eyes scanning the escape pods in front of them. "I know," she replied, her voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We're almost free!" But as they approached the nearest pod, they were met with an unexpected sight. 2 armed guards blocking the door. Alex froze. His heart skipped a beat, and for a moment he was paralyzed. "We've been caught," he thought bitterly. But then he glanced at Solara. She didn't seem afraid. In fact, she looked almost eager. She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing in focus. Without warning, she moved. In a blur, she lunged toward the guards, her movement so fast that Alex barely had time to react. Before he could even raise a hand, she had incapacitated the guards, quick, efficient, and silent. Alex stared in awe. "Did you?" he asked, shocked. Solara didn't answer right away. She simply nodded, her calm demeanor unshaken by the fight. "I've had my share of battles," she said simply, "and I'm still here." Alex couldn't help but smile, though he was still in disbelief at how easily she had handled the situation. It was clear that she had experience, lots of it. With the guards out of the way, they quickly moved to the escape pod and sealed the door behind them. As the pod launched into space, Alex felt the weight of the moment sink in. They had done it. They had escaped. For the first time since they met, Alex realized that survival wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about understanding each other, working together, and trusting that they could rely on one another. Despite their differences, they were both survivors. And now, more than ever, Alex knew that he had made the right choice to stand by her side. As the stars streaked past the window, Alex turned to Solara, a new understanding between them. She had her past, her battles, but now, in this moment, they had a future, together. And whatever came next, they would face it as equals. The stars outside the escape pod's window looked like distant diamonds, twinkling in the vast emptiness of space. Alex sat beside Solara, both of them finally breathing a little easier now that they had escaped the Galactic Empire's grasp. It had been a long, dangerous journey, but they had made it. The hardest part was over, at least that's what Alex hoped. He glanced over at Solara. Her face, usually calm and collected, showed a hint of exhaustion, but there was something else, something brighter. She had done it. She had escaped, and now she was free. For a while, neither of them spoke. The hum of the escape pod was the only sound that filled the silence. Solara was looking out the window, her eyes scanning the stars. Alex knew she was thinking about what came next. They had no clear plan yet, no destination, but they were free. That was all that mattered right now. Finally, Solara broke the silence. "What happens now?" she asked softly, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Alex thought for a moment before answering. "We keep moving. Find a safe place where we can rest. Maybe make contact with some of my people. We'll figure it out." Solara nodded but didn't look at him. "You've risked so much for me, Alex. I don't know how to thank you for what you've done." Alex felt his chest tighten. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're safe." She turned to face him, her eyes softer now. "You've shown me what kindness is. I've never known a human like you. Where I come from, people aren't so generous. I was taught to believe humans were nothing but weak, primitive creatures. But you've proven me wrong." Alex smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. "Well, we're not all bad. I guess we're capable of more than people give us credit for." Solara gave him a small smile in return. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It felt comfortable, even natural. After everything they had been through, they had become something more than just allies. They had become friends, and in Alex's heart, maybe even something more. As the days passed, they found refuge on a quiet, uninhabited planet. It was a place where they could hide, plan their next moves, and finally rest. But Solara knew she couldn't hide forever. The Galactic Empire would still be searching for her, and they would stop at nothing to bring her back. She needed to figure out what to do next, and Alex knew that it was time to face the truth. She couldn't remain a fugitive forever. One evening, as they sat around a fire in the small shelter they had made, Solara turned to Alex with a serious expression. "I have to go back to my people," she said quietly. "The Empire may want to control me, but I am more than just a tool for them. I have a purpose. I was born to lead my people. It's time I take my place." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "You want to go back?" he asked, feeling a pang of fear at the thought of losing her. Solara nodded. "I don't belong here hiding away. I was born a princess. My people need me. They need a leader who will fight for them." Alex's throat felt tight. He had known that Solara's future wasn't going to be easy, but he hadn't imagined it would mean she would leave. He had grown so close to her, and the thought of her returning to the Empire made him feel like he was losing everything. But then Solara looked at him, her eyes filled with a strange mix of sadness and determination. "I won't return to the Empire as their prisoner. I won't let them control me anymore. But I have a chance to change things, to make a difference." Alex understood then. She wasn't just running from the Empire. She was going to face it head-on, challenge it, and fight for her people's freedom. In that moment, he realized that Solara wasn't just a woman he cared for. She was a warrior, a queen in the making. "If you do this," Alex said, his voice steady, "I'll be with you. You're not alone in this fight." Solara smiled, her expression softening. "Thank you, Alex. You've already given me the most important thing, your trust." And that was when Alex knew. He wasn't just helping her escape anymore. He was standing beside her as she became the leader she was always meant to be. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be battles, struggles, and sacrifices. But together they would fight, because Solara wasn't just a slave anymore. She was the queen of her people. And Alex? He was her ally, her protector, and perhaps, in the end, the man who would stand by her side for the rest of their lives.